My dad forced me to attend my golden sister's wedding or he'd cut my tuition. He didn't know I was valedictorian with a six-figure income. Before the ceremony, I handed him an envelope. When he opened it, the phone rang at 8 in the evening as I sat on the floor of my apartment, leaning against the sofa, eating noodles from a box. The screen displayed Dad. I froze with the chopsticks halfway to my mouth. We hadn't spoken in 3 months, maybe 4. I hadn't counted. Hello? Lauren? My father's voice was dry, businesslike, the way he spoke to contractors at the factory. Ashley is getting married on the 29th. The wedding is at 3 in the afternoon. You're coming. That's not a question. It's an order. I slowly put the box down on the table. Dad, I don't want to hear any excuses. She's your sister. Your only sister. And I'm not going to explain to the guests why my younger daughter didn't show up at her older sister's wedding. I was silent. Outside the window, Atlanta hummed with its usual noise. Cars shouting, distant music from the bars on the next street. My world, not theirs. Lauren, are you listening? I'm listening. So you're coming? I thought about saying no. I thought about just hanging up. But he continued, and his voice took on that cold tone I had known since childhood, the same one that meant a threat was coming. If you don't come, you can forget about your college money and forget about this family altogether. Do you understand me? I smiled, silently, to myself. My father didn't see my smile, didn't hear something inside me click, like a lock finally opening. I understand, I said calmly. Good. Send me a message when you arrive. Ashley wants you to help with some small things, decorations or something. You know how she is, always worrying. Okay, that's all. Bye. He hung up first, as always. I sat on the floor for another 5 minutes, staring at the dark screen of my phone. The noodles had gone cold in the box. Outside the window, someone was laughing loudly. A group of students probably returning from a party. I could hear them shouting to each other about tomorrow's exam, about someone giving someone else a ride. Ordinary life. Young. Carefree. My father didn't know. He had no idea that I had graduated from university a year ago, that I had paid for the last 2 years of my studies myself, that my diploma was in a folder in the closet, read with honors with first place in my class, that I now earn more in a month than he does in 3 at the factory. He didn't ask. He never asked. When I was 12, my mother died. Cancer. Fast, vicious, leaving no time even to say goodbye properly. She spent her last 2 months in the hospital and my father between work and hospital corridors. Ashley was 18. She had just finished school and was going to college to study accounting. I remember her crying at my mother's bedside, my mother stroking her hair and whispering, "You're my beautiful girl, my clever girl." Ashley sat there for hours, holding her mother's hand, telling her about her plans for the future. Her mother listened and smiled through the pain. My mother stroked me too, but somehow differently, more quickly, as if she were in a hurry, as if she knew that there was no time left for me. I would come after school, sit on a chair in the corner of the room, and remain silent. I didn't know what to say. My mother would look at me and ask about my lessons and my grades. I would answer briefly. Then the nurse or my father would come, and I would go out into the hallway, sit on a bench, and wait. After the funeral, my father shut himself off. For the first few months, he hardly spoke at all. He went to work, came home, sat in the kitchen with a can of beer, and stared at one spot. Ashley cried at night. I could hear her through the wall, and I just lay there and stared at the ceiling. I didn't cry. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't know how, or because it seemed that if I started, I wouldn't be able to stop. Then something changed. Dad started talking to Ashley more. He asked how she was doing in college, what she was eating, if she needed money. He took her shopping when she needed to buy something for school. He sat with her at the kitchen table while she did her homework and nodded as he listened to her stories about her teachers and classmates. Ashley looks like her mother. The same round face, the same light curls, the same soft voice. My father looked at her, and it seems, saw my mother. I was thin, dark-haired, with sharp features. I looked like my paternal grandmother, whom he disliked. She died when I was 7, but I remembered how tense my father became when she came to visit, how he answered her curtly, coldly. He looked at me and seemed to see her, a stranger, not his own. By the time I was 15, I was used to being a shadow. Ashley needed help with her studies, so I helped her. I sat with her until late at night, explaining math, even though I was barely keeping up with my own homework. My father needed someone to clean up, cook dinner, go to the store. I did it. They didn't thank me, it was a given. Lauren would always help. Lauren wouldn't say anything. When I finished school, my father asked if I was going to go to college. I nodded. He was silent for a long time, staring out the window, and then said, "All right, we'll pay for it. But you have to study hard, not like all those kids who just hang out. And I don't want to hear that you're doing anything stupid." By that time, Ashley had already received her accounting degree and got a job at a local insurance company. My father was proud of her. When she came over for dinner, he asked her about her work, nodded and smiled. He told his neighbors that his eldest daughter worked in an office and that everything was going well for her. When I came home for the holidays, he asked me only one thing. "So, haven't you been kicked out yet?" I enrolled in a programming course, not because I had dreamed of it since childhood. I just liked it. At school, I loved math and computer science, and I wasn't interested in anything else. History, literature, biology. It was all boring. But code was logical. It was understandable. There were no emotions, no subtext. If you do it right, it works. If you do it wrong, it doesn't work. Simple. The first year flew by unnoticed. My father paid for my education, and I knew that every payment he made was a reminder. "I'm spending money on you. You owe me." He didn't say it directly, but I could hear it in his voice when he called to check if I was still studying. "Well, I hope it's worth it," he would say and hang up. In my second year, I started looking for a job. At first, it was small freelance jobs. Website layout, editing other people's code, setting up WordPress for small businesses, pennies, $50, $100 per project, but it was enough for food and small expenses. I didn't tell anyone. Why? My father never asked me what I was doing besides studying. Ashley called once a month to tell me about her life and wasn't interested in mine. In my third year, I was already writing code for small startups. The money got bigger. I started saving. By the end of my third year, I had enough to pay for my fourth year myself. I did it quietly, without telling anyone. My father transferred the money from my tuition as usual, and I simply returned it to his account the next day. He didn't pay any attention to it. He probably thought it was a system error. I didn't bother to explain. I finished my fourth year with honors. I was first in my class. The teachers congratulated me, saying that I was doing well and had great potential. I was offered a job at a startup that developed logistics software. The salary was good, the team was nice, and the tasks were interesting. I moved to Atlanta and rented a one-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood. I told my father that I was still studying and working part-time as a waitress in a cafe. He believed me. Why wouldn't he? He wasn't interested in the details anyway. For a year, I lived my own life. I went to work, talked to my colleagues, went to the movies and coffee shops. I saved money. I bought things I liked, not things that were on sale. I ate at restaurants when I wanted to. I lived. I just lived, without the constant feeling that I owed someone something. I got up from the floor, threw the uneaten noodles in the trash, and walked to the window. Atlanta twinkled with lights. My city, my life, the one I built myself, without my father's help, without Ashley's advice, without their approval. I thought about the wedding, about how Ashley would look beautiful in her white dress, how my father would walk her down the aisle with a proud look on his face, about how I would be seated somewhere off to the side, in the last row, and no one would remember that I had a life too, that I had achieved something too, perhaps more than they had. I picked up my phone and texted Tessie, my colleague. "I'm going home for my sister's wedding. We need to talk." She replied a minute later, "Seriously? After everything you've told me? Seriously? You're crazy. Why are you doing this?" I thought about it. Why indeed? I could have just not gone, said I was busy, that I was sick, that I couldn't take time off. My father would yell, Ashley would be offended, and then they would forget, like they always forgot about me. But I wanted to go. Not for them. For myself. "To close this chapter," I wrote. Tessa didn't reply right away. Then she sent, "Okay, but be careful, and call me if anything happens." I opened the closet and started looking for the folder with my documents, my diploma, university transcripts, bank statements, everything that proved I wasn't the helpless girl they thought I was. I wasn't the Lauren who silently cleaned their house and listened to their orders. I earned my own living. I paid for my own education. I built my own future. And now I was going home to give them back everything they considered my debt. The next morning, I arrived at the office before everyone else. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and wrote a letter to Kevin, our team lead. I need time off from the 27th to the 30th. Family circumstances. Short and to the point with no details. Kevin replied 10 minutes later. "Okay, no problem. Just fix that export bug before you leave." I fixed the bug in 2 hours. Then I checked the code again, sent it for review, and opened my personal folder in the cloud. Documents. I had been collecting them for a year, not knowing why. Maybe I had a premonition that they would be useful someday. Bachelor's degree in information technology, red cover, gold lettering. Inside, my name, graduation date, major. And at the bottom in small print, graduated with honors. First place in the class. I printed out a copy and carefully placed it in a transparent file folder. University transcript first year. Paid by Daniel Carmichael second year. Paid by Daniel Carmichael. Third year. Paid by Lauren Carmichael fourth year. Paid by Lauren Carmichael, I circled the last 2 lines with a red marker to make them clearer. Bank statements for the last year, salary, bonuses, freelance projects that I still sometimes took on in my spare time. In total, it came to a little over $90,000. I earned more in a year than my father did in 3. This is not bragging, just a fact. I calculated how much my father spent on my education for the first 2 years. It came to about $38,000, including all the textbooks, dormitory, and small expenses. I wrote a check for $38,500. I rounded it up to avoid any questions. Finally, I wrote a short note by hand. At first I wanted to type it, but then I thought, no, handwritten would be more honest. "Dad, I'm returning every penny. Now we owe each other nothing. Lauren." I put everything in a white A4 envelope. I sealed it. I signed it on the outside. To Dad. Outside the office window, Atlanta was waking up. People were rushing to work, some were running to the bus stop, some were drinking coffee on the go. A normal morning, normal life. I remembered how I started freelancing in my sophomore year. My first order was to design a simple website for a local bakery. I was paid $50. I spent my entire day off on it, sitting in the library with my laptop, Googling how to make a responsive version, how to connect a feedback form. When the money arrived in my account, I just stared at my phone screen for 10 minutes. $50. Mine. Earned by myself. My father called once a week back then. "How's school?" "Fine." "Not skipping classes?" "No." "All right. Bye." And he hung up. He never asked how I was doing, who I was hanging out with, or what I was interested in. Only my grades and attendance. It was as if I were an investment project he had put money into and was now waiting for a return. In my 3rd year, I was already taking on more serious orders. I wrote an accounting system for a small building materials store, created a website for a law firm, and set up a CRM for a car dealership. The money was more serious, $200, $300, $500 per project. I started saving. At first, I just put it in a separate account, then I used it to pay for my education. When, at the end of my 3rd year, I realized that I could pay for the 4th year myself, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if I had taken off a heavy backpack that I had been carrying for years. I logged into my university account and paid for my tuition with my card. Then my father transferred the money as usual. I waited a day so as not to arouse suspicion and returned the entire amount to him. He didn't ask why. He probably decided that the university had recalculated the fees or something like that. Ashley rarely called. Once a month, maybe once every 2 months. She talked about her job, her boyfriend at the time, how her father had bought her a new car because her old one had broken down. "Dad is so caring," she said. I kept quiet. No one bought me a car. I rode the bus. Once, at the beginning of my senior year, Ashley asked, "How are you? Is school okay?" I was surprised she even asked. "Okay," I replied. "Well, that's good," Ashley said. "Dad said you don't really stand out there, but at least you haven't been kicked out. The main thing is to finish okay and get a job somewhere. Not everyone can be a straight A student, right?" She said it casually, without malice. She was just stating a fact. I didn't say anything. I didn't explain that I had the highest grade in the class. My phone rang, pulling me out of my memories. Ashley. I looked at the screen, sighed, and answered the call. "Lauren." "Finally. Listen, I have a favor to ask." "I'm listening." "We need to buy a gift for Brandon's family. You know, something nice but not too expensive. 5,000. Can you take care of it? Then we'll split it with Dad. 5,000. I smiled silently. "What exactly do you want?" "I don't know. Maybe some kind of good tool. He works at a car repair shop, or a gift certificate to some store. You know these things better than I do." I didn't know, but Ashley always said that when she wanted someone else to do something for her. "Okay, I'll think of something." "Oh, you're awesome. And one more thing. You'll bring it, right? Because I don't have any time. The wedding is coming up soon." "I'll bring it. And please dress modestly. You know, nothing bright. It's my day. I don't want anyone distracting attention." I bit my lip. When did I ever dress brightly? My wardrobe consists of jeans, t-shirts, and sweaters. Everything is dark or gray. "Okay, Ashley. And we'll need to hang the decorations in the hall on the day of the wedding. Will you come early to help?" "I'll help." "You're the best. Okay, I have to run. Bye." She hung up without waiting for an answer. I put the phone down and looked at the envelope with the documents lying on the table. Ashley was used to me always agreeing, to me always helping, to me never saying anything. And my father was used to it too. They both lived in a world where Lauren was the one who did what she was told and didn't cause any trouble. I ordered a professional mechanic's toolkit online. It cost $5,500. I paid with my card. I wasn't going to ask my father for reimbursement. This is my last gift to them. The last time I do anything for this family. In the evening, I met Tessa at our favorite bar 2 blocks from the office. She was already sitting at a table in the corner, a glass of white wine in front of her. I ordered the same thing and sat down across from her. "Well," Tessa said, looking at me intently, "tell me." I told her. About my father's call, about the threat, about my decision to leave. Tessa listened silently, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she took a sip of wine and shook her head. "Lauren, why? Seriously. Just don't go. Say you're busy. Say you're sick. Say Atlanta is on fire. I don't know. Why do you need this?" "I want them to know." "Know what? That you graduated from college? That you're making money? Then tell them on the phone." I shook my head. "I want to give it to them in person. I want to see their faces." Tessa sighed. "It won't change them. Do you understand? They won't suddenly become a normal father and sister. They won't apologize. Most likely they'll get angry or say you're doing it to spite them." "I know." "Then why?" I thought about it. Really, why? I could just go on with my life, not talk to them, not go to the wedding, forget about it. But something inside me wouldn't let me. Some kind of unfinished business, as psychologists say. "I want to put an end to this," I said finally. "I want them to see that I'm not the person they think I am, not so they can be proud of me, not so they can apologize, just so they know. and then I can walk away and never look back." Tessa looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded. "Okay, I understand. But if they start any nonsense, just turn around and drive back. Don't let them drag you back into their games." "I won't. And call me if anything happens, anytime, even at night." "Thanks." We sat until 9, talking about work, about the new project we'd been given, about how Kevin had forgotten someone's birthday again. The usual stuff, normal conversations, the things I had in Atlanta and never had at home. Over the next few days, I finished my assignments, packed my things for the trip, and answered Ashley's calls. "Don't forget the decorations." "I haven't." "And the gift?" "I've already ordered it." "And the bride should be the center of attention, right?" "Yes, Ashley." I wasn't angry, honestly. I just watched her talk and thought, this is what a person who has never doubted that the world revolves around her looks like. Her father raised her that way. He replaced her mother. He made her a princess. And me? I was a servant, a shadow, someone you could rely on but who shouldn't be noticed. The night before my departure, I sat on the floor of my apartment and packed my bag. A simple black dress for the wedding, jeans and a sweater, just in case, toiletries, a phone charger. I put the envelope with the documents in a separate folder and put it in my bag last. It was the most important thing. The phone rang again. My father. "When will you arrive?" "Tomorrow evening. I'll be there at 6. "Okay. We'll be waiting." He hung up. No, "How are you?" No, "How's the road?" No, "Be careful." Just, "We'll be waiting." I turned off the light, lay down in bed, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow I would return to the place I had run away from 5 years ago. But now I am not that girl. Now I know who I am. And I didn't come to ask for anything. I came to give something back, and then leave. Forever. I pulled up to my parents' house at 6:30 in the evening. The sun was already setting, painting the sky with orange and pink stripes. The street looked the same as it did 5 years ago. The same low houses with small yards, the same old pickup trucks by the entrances, the same shop sign on the corner where I used to buy ice cream after school. I parked by the sidewalk and turned off the engine. I sat for a minute looking at the house. Gray walls, brown shutters, a small porch with 2 plastic chairs. My father still hadn't painted the facade, even though he had promised to do so 3 years ago. The grass on the lawn had grown over, and the bushes by the entrance looked untidy. I took my bag, got out of the car, and walked to the door. Before I had a chance to knock, the door opened. My father stood in the doorway wearing an old work shirt and jeans. He had aged. His hair had turned grayer, his face had become thinner, and deep shadows lay under his eyes. "You're here," he said instead of greeting me. "Yes." He nodded and stepped aside, letting me in. I went inside. The smell of an old house, dust, mustiness, something sour from the kitchen, immediately hit my nose. Nothing had changed. The same hallway with photos on the walls, the same rug in the living room, the same old sofa where I used to do my homework. "Ashley will be here in an hour," my father said as he walked into the kitchen. "She and Brandon are finishing something in the living room. Have you eaten?" "Yes." He didn't ask what or where. He just nodded and took a bottle of beer out of the refrigerator. He opened it and took a sip. I stood in the kitchen doorway with my bag in my hand, not knowing where to go. "Your room is occupied," my father said, without looking at me. "Ashley's wedding things and boxes are in there now. You'll sleep on the sofa." I expected that. Of course my room was occupied. Where else would you put unnecessary things if not in the room of an unnecessary daughter? "Okay," I said. My father sat down at the table, picked up the phone, and started scrolling through something. The conversation was over. I went into the living room, put my bag by the sofa, and sat down in the armchair opposite. It was getting dark outside. A light came on in the window of the house next door. Mrs. Ramsey lived there, and she used to give me cookies when I came home from school. I wonder if she's still alive. An hour later, a car pulled up. The door slammed loudly and voices could be heard. Ashley and most likely, Brandon. I didn't get up from the chair. I waited for them to come in. Ashley burst into the house with her usual energy. She always knew how to fill a room with her presence. Loud, bright, unavoidable. Her light curls fell loosely over her shoulders. Her face was covered in bright makeup and bags from some store in her hands. Brandon followed behind her. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing work overalls with a car service logo. His face was pleasant but tired. "Lauren!" Ashley rushed over to me, hugged me quickly and formally, smelling of expensive perfume. "Finally, I thought you'd changed your mind." "Hi, Ashley." She stepped back and looked me up and down. "You've lost weight. Or is it just your clothes? You should eat more. You look kind of pale." I didn't answer. Brandon came over and held out his hand. "Hi, I'm Brandon." "Lauren." We shook hands. His palm was firm and calloused. He smiled briefly and went into the kitchen to join his father. Ashley threw her bags on the sofa and sat down next to me, crossing her legs. "So, how are you? How's school? Haven't you finished yet?" I looked at her. She genuinely didn't know. She didn't remember when I enrolled or how many courses I had taken. She didn't care. "Everything's fine," I said. "Well, that's good. The main thing is to finish. Then you'll find a job somewhere and live a normal life." She waved her hand as if it were something distant and not very important. "By the way, I have news. Brandon got a promotion. He's a senior mechanic now, can you believe it? And his salary went up. We've even started looking at houses. We want to buy our own, not rent. That's wonderful." "Right?" Ashley beamed. "Dad says he'll help with the down payment. Well, not much, but still." "What about you? Is your dad helping you with your apartment too?" I smiled. "No, I rent my own place." "Oh, that's good. Independence and all that." She wasn't listening anymore, looking at her phone, typing something quickly. "Oh, listen. We'll need to hang up the decorations tomorrow morning. Can you come at 9 and help? It's nothing complicated, just garlands and flowers." "Okay. Did you bring the gift?" "Yes, it's in the car. I'll bring it now." I went outside, opened the trunk, and took out a large box of tools. It weighed about 20 kilograms. I carried it into the house and put it in the hallway. "Wow," said Brandon, coming out of the kitchen and seeing the box. "What's that?" "A gift. From my family." He crouched down, opened the box, and looked at the tools. A look of genuine surprise appeared on his face. "This is a professional set. It must be worth 5,000 or 6,000. "Something like that," I said neutrally. Ashley came over and looked into the box. "Oh, it looks nice. Good job, Lauren. Dad will give his part later, so don't worry." I nodded. I wasn't going to ask for anything. This was my last gift to them. In the evening, we sat at the kitchen table, Dad, Ashley, Brandon, and me. Dad heated up some food, macaroni and sausage, and we ate in silence. Brandon talked about work, about how they had delivered an expensive sports car to them today, and he had spent half the day working on it. Dad nodded, listened. Ashley added her comments, laughed. I sat quietly, ate, and watched. They looked like a family, a real family, and I looked like a guest, an outside observer. "How are you, Lauren?" my father suddenly asked, turning to me. "How's school? Haven't failed anything yet?" I looked up from my plate. "Everything's fine, Dad." "Well, that's good. At least I'm getting something out of my money." He smiled, but there was no warmth in his smile, only satisfaction that his investment hadn't gone to waste. Ashley laughed. "Dad always thinks about money, but he's right. The main thing is that it's not wasted." I put my fork down on my plate. "I'm trying," I said calmly. "Well, that's good," my father repeated and turned back to Brandon. The conversation turned to the wedding. How many guests would come? What would be on the menu? Who would officiate the ceremony? I sat silently, finished my water, and asked to leave the table. No one paid any attention. I went upstairs to my old room. The door was half open. I pushed it open and went inside. The room had been turned into a storage room. My bed was covered with boxes. Ashley's wedding dress hung on a chair in a protective cover. On the floor were bags of decorations, rolls of ribbon, and boxes of candles. My old posters on the walls were covered with some papers, guest lists, wedding schedules, notes. I walked around the room, carefully stepping between the boxes. My school photo was still hanging on the wall. Me in my uniform with a ponytail, smiling. 13 years old, a year after my mother's death. I remember that day. The photographer told me to smile, and I smiled, even though I felt empty inside. I walked over to the window. The same view of the neighboring houses, the same old oak tree in the neighbor's yard, the same yellowed streetlight on the corner. How many evenings did I sit here, looking out the window and dreaming of leaving? How many times did I think, just a little longer, and I'll get out of here? I got out. But for some reason, I still felt that something was keeping me here, like invisible chains that wouldn't let me leave for good. Tomorrow I'll break them. I left the room, closed the door carefully, and went downstairs. In the living room, Ashley and Brandon were watching some TV series, and my father was sitting in an armchair with a beer. No one asked where I had been. "I'm going to bed," I said. "Good night," Ashley replied, without taking her eyes off the screen. I unfolded the sofa, took my pajamas out of my bag, and changed in the bathroom. I came back and lay down. The sofa was uncomfortable. The springs dug into my back, and the pillow smelled musty. But that wasn't why I couldn't sleep. I stared at the dark ceiling and thought about how this house used to be my home. I grew up here, took my first steps here, learned to read here, hid under the table here when my parents argued. My mother taught me to bake cookies here. I did my homework at the kitchen table here. We celebrated my 10th birthday here. The last one when my mother was still healthy. And then everything changed. My mother died, my father withdrew into himself, Ashley became the center of the universe, and I became a shadow. This house ceased to be a home. It became just a place where I spent the night between school and the library, between cleaning and cooking, where I was tolerated but not loved. I thought about my apartment in Atlanta, small, modest, but mine, where I can walk barefoot and not be afraid that someone will comment, where I can listen to loud music at night, where I can just be myself. I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. I don't need this house anymore. I don't need this family. I didn't need their approval. Tomorrow, I would give them the last thing they considered theirs: money, documents, a debt that never really existed, but which they had pinned on me for years, and then I would leave and never look back. I fell asleep in the early hours of the morning as dawn was breaking outside the window. My sleep was restless and fitful, but when I woke up, my head felt strangely clear. Today is my wedding day. Today is my day of freedom. I woke up at 7 to the sounds coming from the kitchen. Ashley was already bustling about, something was clattering, my father was talking on the phone. I got up, made the bed, and went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, a pale face, dark circles under my eyes, messy hair. I washed my face with cold water, pulled my hair back into a low ponytail, and returned to the living room. "Are you awake yet?" Ashley was standing in the hallway with a cup of coffee, her face already made up, her hair pulled back in a bun. "We have to be at the hall at 9, help with the decorations, get dressed quickly." I nodded, took my jeans and t-shirt out of my bag, and changed. My father was sitting in the kitchen with his phone, writing something in a notebook. He looked at me as I walked past. "Don't forget to help your sister," he said. "Today is an important day." "I won't forget." The three of us went, me, Ashley, and Brandon. My father stayed at home and said he would join us later. The hall was 15 minutes away from the house, an old building that was rented out for various events. We went inside. There were empty tables, stacked chairs, and boxes of dishes in the corner. It smelled of dampness and old wood. For the next 3 hours, I hung garlands, arranged flowers in vases, and covered the tables with white tablecloths. Ashley told me where to put things, and Brandon carried the heavy stuff. I did everything silently, automatically. My hands remembered this work. How many times I had helped in the same way at parties, cleanups, and birthday celebrations, always in the shadows, always useful. At 12 o'clock, Ashley looked at her watch and cried out, "Oh my God, I have to go home and get ready. Lauren, can you finish up here? There's just a little left. Arrange the chairs and put candles on the tables." "Sure thing." "You're the best." She quickly kissed me on the cheek and ran to the exit. Brandon nodded goodbye to me and followed her. I was left alone. I slowly arranged the chairs around the tables, laid out the napkins, and placed the candles. The hall looked nice, simple but festive. White fabrics, green garlands, soft lighting. Ashley would be pleased. I sat down on one of the chairs and took out my phone. I texted Tessa, "Everything's fine, I'll be home tonight." She replied immediately, "Hang in there and remember, you don't owe them anything." I smiled. Tessa is right. I don't owe them anything, but today I'm going to pay them back anyway. At 2 o'clock, I went home to change. My father was already dressed in his suit, sitting in the living room waiting. He looked at me. "Ashley is already at the hairdresser's. The ceremony is at 3. Don't be late." I went up to the bathroom and took a simple black dress out of my bag. Knee length, no embellishments, no neckline. Modest, inconspicuous. Just what Ashley wanted. I put it on, applied a little makeup, and let my hair down. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked normal. Nothing special. But I was holding a white envelope in my hands, the same one I had sealed last night. Inside was everything they should have known long ago. I put the envelope in a small black purse and went downstairs. The church was 2 blocks from the house, small, white, with wooden benches and a simple altar. When my father and I arrived, the guests were already gathering at the entrance. Familiar faces, neighbors, relatives, my father's colleagues from the factory, Ashley's friends. They greeted my father, smiled, and greeted me briefly without much interest. I stood aside, holding my purse in front of me. My father was talking to someone, laughing. He looked happy, proud. Today his eldest daughter was getting married, his perfect daughter. I waited for the moment when he stepped aside to answer a phone call. I approached him quietly. He turned around, saw me, nodded, and ended the conversation. "What?" he asked briefly. I took an envelope out of my purse and handed it to him. "Dad, I wanted to give you this. Open it later." He looked at the envelope in surprise, then at me. "What is it?" "You'll see later." The ceremony is about to begin. He took the envelope, turned it over in his hands, and was about to ask something. But at that moment, the church doors opened, and the organizer waved her hand to let everyone in. My father put the envelope in his jacket's inside pocket and went inside. I followed him. The church quickly filled up. I sat in the last row, on the edge. From there, I had a good view of the altar, but no one noticed me. The guests sat, whispered, and laughed. Soft music played. There was a smell of flowers and incense. Then the music changed. Everyone stood up. Brandon came out to the altar in a dark suit, looking excited. Behind him was the priest, an elderly man in white robes, and then Ashley walked through the door. She looked really beautiful. A white dress with lace, a veil, a bouquet of white roses. Her face was glowing, her eyes were shining. Her father was leading her by the hand, and there was such pride and love on his face that it almost hurt to look at him. I had never seen him look at me like that before. They walked past me. Ashley noticed me out of the corner of her eye, smiled quickly, and moved on. Her father didn't turn around. The ceremony lasted about an hour. Vows, exchange of rings, tears from the guests. Ashley cried with happiness. Brandon gently wiped her tears. The priest spoke about love, family, fidelity. The guests nodded, some wiped their eyes. I sat silently and watched. It was like watching a movie. It was as if none of this was happening to me, to my family. I was an outsider, a random guest at someone else's party. When the ceremony was over, the newlyweds walked past everyone to the exit. The guests congratulated them, threw rose petals, and laughed. I was the last to leave when everyone was already outside. No one noticed. The banquet began at 5. Everyone moved to the hall that I had decorated in the morning. Now it was filled with people, music, and the smell of food. The tables were laden with food, waiters were carrying drinks, and some people were already dancing in the center of the hall. I was seated at a distant table with distant relatives I hardly knew. They greeted me briefly and turned back to their conversations. I sat, ate salad, and watched the main table where Ashley, Brandon, and my father were seated. They laughed, clinked glasses, and talked with guests. Ashley looked around the room every few seconds to make sure everyone was watching her. My father sat next to her, relaxed and content. He took a sip of wine, put down his glass, and suddenly remembered something. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out a white envelope. I froze. He turned the envelope in his hands and looked at me across the room. I sat motionless, staring at him. He frowned, opened the envelope, and took out the papers. I saw him start to read, at first quickly, carelessly, then more slowly. Then he stopped. His face turned pale. He reread it. Again. He took the next sheet. A diploma, transcripts, a check. His hands trembled slightly. Ashley turned to him and asked something. She saw his face. She frowned. She took the papers from his hands. She began to read. I saw her face change. Surprise, confusion, then anger. She read on, quickly turning the pages. A diploma with honors. First in her class. Paid for the last 2 years herself. Earns $90,000 a year. A check for $38,500. A note. Dad, I'm returning every penny. Now we owe each other nothing. Ashley slowly put the papers down on the table. She looked at her father, then at me. Her face became stony. Her father stood up. The papers were still in his hands. He walked across the room to my table. The guests parted, looking at him in surprise at him. The music was playing, but he couldn't hear it. He reached me and stopped. Lauren. He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. He stood there, holding the papers, and looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. Is this true? He finally managed to say. Yes. You graduated a year ago? Yes. First in your class? Yes. He was silent. He processed the information. Then he looked at the check. You want to give me the money back? I am. It's your money. You spent it on my education. I'm paying you back. But why? Ashley approached. Her face was red. Her eyes were burning. Did you deliberately decide to ruin my day? She wasn't shouting, but her voice trembled with anger. Today is my wedding, my day, and you're making a scene about money and diplomas? I looked at her calmly. It's a wedding. Your day. I just paid back a debt. Nothing more. Debt? What debt? Dad paid for your education out of love, not so you could pay him back. Out of love? I smiled. For the first time in many years, I smiled at her just like that, without any pretense. He reminded me about this money every time he called, every time he said I owed him. So I'm paying back the debt. Now we're even. My father shook his head as if trying to clarify his thoughts. I didn't want you to take it that way. Just what, Dad? I stood up. I took my purse. Just wanted me to know my place? To remember that without you, I'm nobody? Well, I'm not a nobody. I pulled myself up. I earned it myself. I paid for it myself. And now I don't owe you anything. All the guests were looking at us. The music stopped. Brandon approached Ashley, put his hand on her shoulder, but she shook him off. You've always been like this, Ashley hissed. Always about you. Mom died and you didn't even cry. Dad tried to support you, but you were always cold. And now you come here, to my wedding, and act like you're the victim. I looked at her angry face, her perfect hair, her expensive dress, at my older sister who never asked how I was doing, who never noticed when I was hurting, who lived in her own world where she was the center of the universe and I was just a shadow. I'm not a victim, Ashley, I said quietly. I just don't want to be part of this family anymore. Silence. Even the waiters froze. My father turned even paler. Lauren, you can't. We're family. No, Dad, we're not family. Family is when people care about each other, when they ask how you are, when they take an interest in your life. But you're just used to me being there, doing what you say, not causing any trouble. But I don't want to live like that anymore. I walked past them and headed for the exit. I heard voices behind me. My father was saying something, Ashley was shouting, Brandon was trying to calm her down. The guests whispered. I walked past the main table. I saw Aunt Marlene, my mother's sister, who had once been kind to me. She sat with her eyes wide open. I stopped next to her. Bye, Aunt Marlene. Lauren, my daughter. It's okay, really. I left the hall. Cold air hit my face. I took a deep breath, went to the car, got in, and started the engine. My phone rang. It was my father. I ignored the call. It rang again. It was Ashley. I ignored it. I pulled out of the parking lot and drove to Atlanta. Back. Home. To my life. The drive took an hour. I drove in silence without turning on the music. It was getting dark outside. Atlanta greeted me with lights, noise, life. I parked near my house, went up to the 4th floor, and opened the door to my apartment. Silence. My silence. I kicked off my shoes, threw my purse on the couch, and walked over to the window. Atlanta twinkled below. My city. My life. The phone rang again. My father. I looked at the screen. I thought about answering. Then I changed my mind. I put the phone on the table, screen down. That's it. It's over. For the first 3 days after the wedding, I just lived. I went to work, wrote code, talked to Tessa over lunch, came home and watched TV shows until late at night. The phone rang regularly. My father, Ashley, even Aunt Marlene once. I didn't answer. I just looked at the screen, waited for the call to drop, and moved on. Tessa asked if everything was okay. I nodded. She didn't press for details, and I was grateful to her for that. On the 4th day, in the evening, as I sat on the floor of my apartment with my laptop on my knees, finishing up a bug, the phone rang again. My father. I looked at the screen, sighed, and answered. Hello. Lauren. My father's voice was quiet, tired. Finally. I've been calling you for 3 days. I know. He paused. We need to talk. About what? About what happened. About everything. I put my laptop aside, got up, and walked over to the window. Atlanta glowed below. Endless rows of lights, cars, life. I'm listening, I said. My father paused again. Then he began to speak slowly, as if choosing his words. I didn't know. That you'd graduated, that you paid for your own education, that you earned so well. I just didn't know. You didn't ask. I thought you would tell me, if it was important. Dad, you called me once a month. You asked if I had been kicked out. Not even, how are you doing, or how are you feeling? Just, haven't been kicked out yet? Why should I have told you anything? He sighed heavily. I realize I wasn't the best father. After Mom died, I just didn't know how to deal with you. You were so withdrawn, so quiet. And Ashley, she was like a mother. I saw my mother in her, and it was easier for me with her. And it was hard with me, because I wasn't a mother. I was myself. Yes. He fell silent. I know it's unfair. I know I screwed up. But I loved you. I love you. I just didn't know how to show it. I listened to his voice and felt nothing. No anger, no regret, no relief, just emptiness. It was as if he was talking to someone else, not me. You know, Dad, I said quietly, I'm not angry. Really. I haven't been angry for a long time, but I don't need this family anymore. I don't need your excuses. I don't need Ashley's apology. I just don't need anything from you. Lauren, bye, Dad. I hung up. He didn't call back. Over the next few days, my father sent me messages. Long ones full of excuses and memories. how he remembers when I was little, how we went fishing together when I was 8, how he bought me my first bike, how proud he was when I got into college. I read those messages and didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish him. I just didn't know what to say. All those memories, they were real, but they didn't make up for the years of indifference, the years of coldness, the years when I was just a shadow in this house. Ashley wrote too. At first, angry messages, that I ruined her wedding, that all the guests were talking about my drama instead of her celebration, that Dad is sad all the time now and she doesn't know how to support him, that I was a selfish person who only thought about herself. Then, apologetic ones, that she didn't mean to say those things, that she understood she should have cared more about me too, that she wanted us to make up, to be a family again. I didn't respond, neither to the angry ones nor to the apologetic ones. I just read them and deleted them. Aunt Marlene called a week later. I answered. She was the only one who ever treated me normally. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "how are you?" "Fine, Auntie." "I heard what happened. Your father told me." "Are you really not going to talk to them?" "Really?" She sighed. "I understand. After your sister died, your father changed. He became harsh. He focused on Ashley because she reminded him of Kate. And you, he didn't know how to love you because he didn't know how. But that's no excuse. You had a right to love, to attention, to be appreciated." "Thank you, Auntie. If you ever need to talk, call me. I'm always here." "Thank you." We said goodbye. Aunt Marlene is the only one of them I haven't deleted from my contacts. Life was getting better. At work, I was offered a new project, more complex, more interesting, with higher pay. Kevin said that I was doing a good job and that the company valued such specialists. I agreed. I started working with a new team, learning new technologies. I liked it. It distracted me from thoughts about my family. One day, a month after the wedding, I was sitting in our favorite coffee shop near the office, working on my laptop. Tessa went to a meeting with a client and I was left alone. I was drinking coffee, writing code, listening to music on my headphones. "Excuse me." Someone touched my shoulder. I took off my headphones and turned around. Standing in front of me was a guy in his 30s, tall, thin, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, with a backpack slung over his shoulder. He had a pleasant face and quick eyes. "Yes? You're Lauren, right? From our company." "I saw you at the general meeting." "Yes, I'm Lauren. And you?" "Mark. I'm from the mobile development department." He smiled a little shyly. "Listen, I don't want to distract you, but I saw you coding something and thought, can I take a look? Just out of curiosity. If you don't mind, of course." I looked at him in surprise, then at my laptop screen, then back at him. "You want to look at my code?" "Well, if it's not confidential, I just heard that you're good at Python, and I'm learning it now, so I'd like to see how you structure your projects." I didn't know how to respond. No one had ever asked to see my code just out of curiosity. Usually, it was reviews from colleagues or questions from juniors. But just like that, "Okay," I said. "Sit down." He sat down opposite me, and I turned my laptop toward him. He started looking, nodding, and occasionally asking questions. I explained. We sat there for about 20 minutes discussing architecture, features, optimization. Mark turned out to be smart, asked the right questions, understood what he was talking about. When he thanked me and was about to leave, I suddenly asked, "Do you come here often?" "This coffee shop? Yes, almost every day. I like working here. The office can be stuffy sometimes." "I'm here often, too. Maybe we can sit down sometime and discuss the code?" He smiled. "I'd love to." "Shall we exchange contact details?" We exchanged numbers. He left and I sat there watching him go. Why did I suggest meeting again? I don't know. Maybe because he seemed normal. Maybe because I hadn't talked to anyone new in a long time. Maybe just because I wanted to. We started meeting at a coffee shop once a week. At first, we talked about work, code, and technology. Then we talked about life. Mark told me that he grew up in Florida and moved to Atlanta 3 years ago for work. He lives alone. His parents are far away. His sister is married and has 2 children. He loves bicycles and movies, hates cooking, so he eats semi-prepared meals. I didn't say much about work, about university, about the fact that I also live alone. I didn't mention my family. Mark didn't ask. Maybe he sensed that it was a painful topic. 2 months later, we went to the movies together. Then we went to dinner. Then he walked me home, and we stood by my building talking for another hour. He kissed me quickly, timidly, and left. I went up to my apartment, smiling. Mark wasn't perfect. He forgot to reply to messages, was sometimes half an hour late for meetings, and was sometimes so focused on work that he didn't hear what I was saying. But he was sincere. He asked how I was doing and really listened to my answer. He didn't try to change or fix me. He was just there. I wasn't perfect either. Sometimes I withdrew into myself and didn't want to talk. Sometimes I was harsh or cold. Mark didn't take offense. He waited for me to open up on my own. He didn't pressure me. 4 months later, I moved into a new apartment, bigger, brighter, with large windows and a balcony. Mark helped me carry boxes and assemble furniture. We sat on the balcony in the evening, drinking wine and looking at Atlanta. "It's beautiful here," he said. "Yes, I like it." "Are you happy?" I thought about it. Happy? I don't know, but I felt good, calm, free. "Yes," I said, "happy." My father called less often, once every 2 weeks, then once a month. I didn't answer. Ashley stopped writing altogether. I heard from Aunt Marlene that she and Brandon had bought a house, that Ashley was pregnant, that my father would soon be a grandfather. I listened and nodded. It was their life, not mine. I started traveling. At first, it was short trips. New York for the weekend, Miami for a week, then further, California, Seattle, even Cancun, Mexico with Mark. I saw the world I had dreamed of when I sat in that little room in Georgia and looked out the window. Work was going well. I got a raise, then a promotion. Now I was no longer a junior developer, but a middle one. I managed small projects and trained juniors. Kevin said I had the potential to become a team lead. I worked on it. Life was good. Not perfect, not magical, but normal. I had a job I liked, a husband who understood me, an apartment where I felt comfortable, friends I could hang out with in the evening, freedom to do what I wanted. The year passed quickly. I was sitting in the same coffee shop near the office where I had once met Mark. I was working on a new project on my laptop. I was drinking coffee and listening to music. The spring sun was shining outside the window and people were rushing about their business. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Dad. I stared at that word for a long time. I remembered his voice, his face, that house in Georgia. I remembered how he walked Ashley down the aisle, how he looked at her with love. He never looked at me that way. I remembered how I gave him the envelope, how he read the papers, how pale he was, how he tried to say something and couldn't. I remembered his calls, his messages, his excuses. I looked at the screen again. Then I calmly hung up. Not out of anger, not out of resentment, just because it's no longer my story. It's his story, his pain, his regret. And I'm already far away, in my life, in my world. I put the phone face down on the table. I took a sip of coffee. I went back to the code. Outside the window, Atlanta lived its own life. Sunny, noisy, bright. My city, my freedom, my future. The phone didn't ring again. I wrote code, smiled, and thought about Mark coming over in the evening and us going to that new restaurant he told me about, that I had a meeting with a client tomorrow and wanted to be well prepared, that Tessa and I were planning to go to Charleston for the weekend next month. I thought about my life, the life I had built for myself, without my father's money, without Ashley's advice, without their approval. I don't owe them anything, and I don't need anything from them. This is freedom. Real freedom. I finished my coffee, closed my laptop, and went outside. The sun warmed my face. I smiled, took out my phone, and texted Mark. I got off work early. Want to go to the park with me? He replied a minute later. I'm on my way. I walked to the park with a light step without looking back. The past was behind me. Only the future lay ahead. My future.